I think I'm coming through okay, and this is a screen recording of the new iMac that is the production machine up in the studio. This is to walk you through how we are doing kind of live editing slash recording the live to tape process, as well as kind of incorporating visuals. So this video also has a companion video with my cell phone, kind of showing the signal flow in the studio so that you can kind of see the real life in the flesh how this works. So we're going to be using OBS, Open Broadcaster Studio, for this. There are tutorials online for how to work with this program, but it's pretty straightforward. I have not gotten to, as of whatever date in August this is, August 6, 2020, I have not gotten to installing and, or I have installed Wirecast on this machine, but I have not set it up and reconnected all of the things that we did in the Wirecast setup. So we're going to be using OBS for now. So at a high level, OBS has scenes that are composed of various sources, and when you hit the transition button between your preview and your program monitor, it will oscillate between two scenes, which are basically just a composition of various sources. You can, of course, select, no, I want to go to this thing next, and go to it, and then go to it. So if you want to build another kind of composition layout, you would duplicate one of these scenes or start a new scene, call it something nice and descriptive, and then build in your sources. So for instance, on the two-shot, we have two sources, the A6400, which is the new camera that we have, and that is running into the Cam Link 4K, which is a USB to HDMI device on the back of the machine. You'll notice it is a 4K device, so and the camera is shoving out signal at 4K. So our canvas, our base canvas here is 1920 by 1080, but all these striped lines are showing all of the excess picture that's not yet included, or that's not included in this composition. Kind of framed it up with the bookcases in the center, and the chairs are a little off center right now, but if people were sitting there, it would look nice and square. In the future, when this is used for like a single person shot at the desk, it'll the amount of kind of the lens is way wider than the previous lens in our old studio setup, and that will be more handy when someone's closer to the screen. The other source that we have in this scene is called Mixer Board. It has a little audio icon. That is the Behringer mixer board that's sitting on the desk. And right now it only has two XLR inputs, the two lav mics that are coming, there's two Sony lav mics that we got for the new studio. They're both running into channel 1 and channel 2. Channel 1 is the right side, channel 2 is the left side. Maybe that makes sense to flip. I'm actually going to flip that right now. So, all right, so channel 1 is the person on the left side, channel 2 is the person on the right side. I'm currently holding channel 2 mic, so if I mute it, I should mute. Yep, and that worked. There's probably still some configuration on the board that's necessary. There are no like effects being pumped in. I don't even think the compressor is working very well, but it's working for now. And you can see you've got a little slider board right here in your audio mixer. You always want to make sure that audio is coming through when you switch to different scenes. There isn't a in Wirecast, there's just a layer on the bottom that has our audio and microphone capturing that's just constant. This is going to be scene to scene. You're going to have to make sure that audio is working. Now for monitoring, OBS is a little funky with this. You would have to go to the gear in the audio mixer, advanced properties, and if you wanted to monitor, you have to select monitor. And if it's naturally on monitor off, so in Mixer Board I've set to monitor and output, meaning it is coming through the system audio of the machine. So if I booted up the speakers here, we'd get some feedback. Or if I wore the headphones, I can be hearing myself talk. Real important not to choose monitor only, because then you'll be able to hear yourself, and I think you get levels, but you won't hear it in your in your mix and in your final video. So do look at that. If you wanted to leave this window open, you could uncheck this, active sources only. And then when I switch from shot to shot, let's go to visuals only, it will cause these to go active, inactive status sort of on us. So you could actually think of a workflow in which you have this off to the side if you need to, and that way when you're transitioning from shot to shot or scene to scene, the active, inactive signals kind of go up and down, and that way you can kind of make sure, am I supposed to be hearing this in my headphones or not, based on the settings here. You can, of course, also kind of play with balance. This might be useful for, we are trying to record in a mono mix, so maybe instead of on the board doing a pan left to right, depending on the speaker, you might want to do that here. I have not set up that to where left speaker is coming in on the left, on fully left channel, and right, they're all both coming in fully balanced, so that might be something that we do later on. So I'm just going to get this out of the way and show you another shot. Okay, so that's that. By the way, in the settings feature down here on the right-hand side, we pretty much skip everything. General stream, skip that. Output and video are gonna be your main go-tos. So video, we have our canvas resolution, and then the scaled resolution. So we could have something bass coming in here and then scale it down. We're not doing that. We're just having a pass-through of the same scale, and that's useful. And then over an output, streaming, you could ignore that because we're not streaming from this. Recording, we are going to be dropping recorded files to the desktop. We are going to be using this high-quality medium file size recording format MP4. And it does give you a warning that if things crash during your recording, it won't be able to close the file out and you may not be able to recover the file. Generally, we should be okay and not have a problem with any of that. So that's just in case. We might dig into the more advanced stuff later and lock it down, but for now, is what it is. Visuals only, if I cut to that. Now notice I said transition to it, and then it highlighted in the preview mode the two-shot, meaning it's displaying in my sources that two-shot. So if I want to look at what's going on in this visuals only, I'll pull that open. So in this one, we have three sources listed: the desktop monitor, which is the monitor to the immediate right of where I'm sitting of this screen recording. Another source called ProPres window, and you notice this one is actually has the little eyeball turned off. That's because when I came in and set this up, that was the previous kind of way we were doing it, and it's interacting funky with Keynote and ProPresenter and all that, so I actually muted it, but I don't need it anymore, so I'm going to right-click and hit remove. And do you wish to remove it? Yes, I'm not removing it as a named source through all of my options, because if I wanted to add a source, a window capture, I could add an existing instead of create a new one, and there's that ProPres window, but I don't need it, so I'm getting rid of it from the thing entirely. So I have visuals, I've got the desktop monitor, which is an entire display. Whatever I put on this display will happen. So I am manipulating the display next to me. That's what I will see in that source. I also have an audio source called I Show You. This is the really funky workaround that's necessary for Macs. Macs and OBS do not allow for a straight audio source, which is the sound card of the machine. So you have to actually download an external application. The most popular one is called I Show You. And that then acts as kind of an intermediary sound card that's capturing anything coming off of your sound card of your Mac. And then what you have to do, which I've already done, is you have to select the output device to be I Show You. So you could select it to be I Show You audio capture. That way anything you play off this Mac will be going to that device, which then can be picked up in OBS. But you don't want to just do that. You want to do this one, which is one that I custom made, which is an aggregate device doing 2 outputs, going both to the built-in output, meaning the 3/4 inch out the back, as well as the iShowU. So that allows you to both monitor and get the iShowU going. And you'll notice that it's picking up my voice because I have the monitoring on. And that's the funky part about this, is how to adjust that. Oh, no. Sorry, retract that. It's not because of OBS and monitoring, it's because of the screen capture that I'm doing right now in QuickTime. If I were not screen capturing in another device to show you all this, I would not be seeing anything here because it's not picking up the board and I'm not playing any audio from the machine. The last scene that we have is called Preaching Slides. This one also looks like it has some extemporaneous sources, so I'm going to kind of clean those up here. And so this scene, as you can imagine, has the camera view, the mixer board for our audio, window capture, keynote window is back to, that's actually a different source than the display capture. And then it has just a straight picture in the back, which is our clouds. I do want to eventually clean this up and maybe even just get rid of the whole embed and just have a picture-in-picture on top of slides and try to get Tracy to arrange his slides with room on the side, but that's not the case right now. So this one is kind of different. We can switch this back to the desktop. That's fine. It'll work the same ways because basically it'll say there's one keynote window, and so I'm going to display that. Right now, the keynote window itself, as you can see on the right-hand side, is not playing. It's minimized. So that display is here. And notice as I'm wiggling it, it's wiggling in the display, but it's not wiggling in the window capture. That's because if I were to add a source, I have 2 options. I could display a window capture, which is then just stripping the feed of an application into a particular window. I can add that as a source, or I can add a display capture, which is going off the display card, which is an entire display. Maybe I'll get into explaining why it's different right now, but there is going to be a funkiness with the keynote and such. I can explain that now. So we've got ProPresenter is going to be driving our visuals. It's been kind of whirring here in the background, kind of displaying visuals. Those visuals the output is set to off right now. Notice in the upper right-hand corner. So if I turn that on, it's going to take over the display. But notice how it didn't take over the window of Keynote. And that might become useful to have those be somewhat separate, because if we go to the full display, that's what we're seeing here. I could turn that on and off. And the reason you might need to do that is Keynote is just, oof, don't like what's going on with Keynote. Keynote has, if you go up to play, it has 2 options. Play slideshow, which is the native kind of way that it plays. If you hit this play button, it will play. It will take over all of the displays, graying out the ones that I'm not using, and just displaying our presentation on the one that I am using. I don't like that, because what that does is it then takes offline your OBS editor here. Now, this worked in the past because we used a whole separate machine to essentially act as a laptop or another machine running the Keynote, and all we're doing is collecting a display. This setup is slimmer in that we're not running the Keynote on another device. We're running it on the same device that we're also live switching. So we need to do something slightly different. Up in Play, you have the option to play slideshow in window. If I click that, it automatically just sits inside a smaller window. And as you can see, that's working well in our window capture. Now, the dimensions are kind of off. I believe there's some locking that we could do of this if we really wanted to. So if you wanted to, you could make it nice and small. and we could eventually get to a layout in which this one desktop has all of your applications that you're running. An alternative is to bring it over to this side and actually do Control Command F or hit this green spot to make it full screen in your display next to you. That is my preference for how to do this, because then you have a confidence monitor at the desk running where you can see exactly what the slides are, and it's full screen and it's nice, and it kind of declutters this side of the house where you can do whatever you need to do here. Now notice if I toggle in ProPresenter the output on and off, you actually don't get any difference on that desktop that's sitting next to, on that display sitting next to us. That's because Keynote is top dog and it takes over everything. I think we can change that somewhere in some settings, but I haven't found it yet, and I'm not going to track it down because it's just as easy to have this running, see it's on, and if I select Keynote, meaning my focus, application focus is on Keynote, I can hit Control Command F, and you noticed in OBS there that it's just toggling between hitting that full screen and not, and so it's playing and taking over or not. Now we do lose the kind of like presenter display where we see what slide is next, and we see the build remain time, and we get the option to kind of skip around slides. For the most part, Tracy's script writing and performance are so locked down that we don't often need to do a whole bunch of dancing to get away with that. But we can, if we need to, kind of work that in. Also, I'm very minimal to a whole nother device being added in as the Keynote kind of playing thing. That could be useful, as you'll see in the cell phone video of the studio signal route, that maybe the presenter actually commands their slides like they would at an in-person talk with a projector. They're there with their device hitting next on their slides, and we're capturing them as they control them, rather than the technician back here doing all of that. Okay, so manipulating the preview, right? It works same as Wirecast, where if I make a change over in preview, I would have to hit transition in order to cut to that change. Let's put those back. Very similar controls as Wirecast. If I go over to maybe preaching slides, you can see I can click on a source. It now highlights that bounding box. And if I grab a corner, it actually defaults to keeping the scale the same. If I grab a side, that's still the same. If I hold the Option key, that is also doubling as a cropping mechanism. And that's really important because, again, the feed coming off the camera is a much wider view than we're used to. So I'm even pretty confident that when a person sits down in this, we won't need the entire thing. We'll need to manipulate it. And you'll notice I'm kind of offsetting the layout here and leaving some gap. That's because I've noticed on some TVs, if we have it totally in the corner, it's actually kind of cutting things off and it doesn't look as pretty. So I'm trying to use like title safe essentially for that. I'm going to go ahead and move the audio source to the bottom so that we're just we're standard on where we throw our audio sources. Okay. You'd hit start recording. Down at the bottom, it displays your kind of CPU usage and trying to keep it at 30 frames a second and your recording time. Keep an eye on that, right? If things are looking like you're running too many applications or something's going wrong and you're compromising on frames per second, or your CPU usage is really getting up there, you might want to kind of call halt, hit stop, so that way you can ensure that that's working right. I think that's everything. I have Descript installed, I have Premiere Pro installed, and you should be prompted if there is, on the off chance that the machine is not kind of registered with the Adobe license, you should be prompted with the option to log me out of something else that I'm logged into. Usually if we're producing on the weekend, logging me out of any device is not a problem. Just go ahead and do it so that you can get your stuff done. Keynote, you could get this set before. before you start. So, you know, it's over here, it's on slide 1, it's ready to go, and you have your visuals going. And so see how my keynote slides are going, my visuals are going. You could, if you wanted to, just fly with keynote somewhat blind. So I move focus over to keynote, and I can start hitting next. And now I'm just, my confidence monitor in Keynote is my window capture in OBS, but I'm probably recommending the Control Command F in order to just take over your confidence monitor here physically next to you. All right, hopefully this was helpful, and sorry it was kind of long. I wanted to be comprehensive in everything I covered, and if I didn't cover anything, please let me know so that way I can append to this training or make a new one entirely that's more concise and straight to the point. Thanks.